The golden sunlight spilled across the cracked sidewalk in front of Bright Tech Innovations' towering glass skyscraper, a beacon of ambition that seemed to mock Alicia Monroe as she stood there, heart pounding like a drum. Can you imagine the weight of that moment? Her trembling hands clutched a fragile hope, a dream so big it threatened to burst from her chest, while her scuffed canvas sneakers, patched and fraying like her nerves, squeaked softly with every hesitant step. She was the janitor's daughter, a title that seemed to brand her before she could even open her mouth. But oh, how she burned with determination. In her hand, a cheap plastic folder held a stack of resumes, each page a testament to her grit, typed on a clunky library computer with coins her mother, Martha Monroe, had scraped together after grueling night shifts. Those papers weren't just words. They were a battle cry, a vow to break free from the shadows of doubt and shame. Alicia paused at the top of the marble steps, the soft breeze teasing the perfectly trimmed shrubs, whispering of a world divided. The ordinary folks outside and the elite within. Could she really bridge that gap? Her slender frame, draped in a worn silver-gray blazer, a precious hand-me-down from Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor who saw her brilliance, felt like armor, though it hung loosely on her. Her sneakers, battle-worn and stubborn, were proof of her refusal to surrender. She inhaled deeply, tasting dust and sunlight, and squared her shoulders. Today was her chance, wasn't it? A shot at an analyst position, a seat at the table, a voice to be heard. The revolving glass doors swung open, reflecting her trembling silhouette under the grand chandeliers, and with every step, she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes brushing past her, sizing her up, dismissing her. Inside, the lobby buzzed with dark suits and polished shoes, voices dripping with upper-crust confidence that only deepened her sense of being an outsider. Nobody believed a small black girl in borrowed clothes belonged here, unless she was wielding a mop like her mother. But Alicia wasn't here to clean. No way. She carried ambition, fierce and unyielding, a dream to sit at a conference table, to be judged for her intellect, not her skin or her sneakers. Her heart thumped wildly in her petite chest, but she refused to back down. For her mother, who'd toiled in this very building for 28 years, and for herself, who'd dreamed of this moment for so long, she pressed forward. The sparkling lights, the scent of luxury perfume, the soft hum of ambient music, it all screamed, "You don't belong." Yet Alicia lifted her chin, pride burning beneath her nerves. Martha Monroe's daughter, she whispered to herself, each word a spark of defiance. Today, I reach for my dream, no matter how hard they try to shove me out. The lobby's air thickened as Alicia approached the reception desk, the polished marble tiles reflecting her scuffed sneakers like a cruel mirror. Poverty versus privilege. What a stark contrast. She tightened her grip on her resumes, trying to steady her breath, but her heart raced when the receptionist, Rachel Evans, looked up. Rachel, a white woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and vibrant red lipstick, wore a form-fitting dress and blazer that screamed power. Her sharp eyes scanned Alicia from her simple black hair to her faded sneakers, lingering on the oversized blazer with a faint, mocking smile. It was a look that could slice through pride like a knife. Alicia mustered a polite smile, her voice soft but steady. "Good morning. I have an interview for the analyst position at 10:30. Monroe. Alicia Monroe." The moment her name left her lips, Rachel froze, her brows arching like she'd heard the punchline to a bad joke. What was that about? In a heartbeat, the receptionist's practiced friendliness vanished, replaced by a venomous grin that seemed to invite the whole lobby to join her private show. She glanced around, then raised her voice, ensuring every ear caught her words. "Monroe, huh? Don't tell me you're the janitor's kid. Martha Monroe's daughter, the one who cleans the basement, right?" The lobby seemed to shiver with a cold, cruel energy. Men in leather chairs nudged each other, stifling laughs. A blonde assistant nearby smirked, her expression a mix of pity and amusement, as if Alicia were some unwilling sideshow. Can you feel the sting of that moment? Alicia fought to keep her composure, her smile trembling as her hands clenched the folder's edges, her lower lip quivering. Her clothes, her face, her very skin. They were all laid bare for those prying eyes. Rachel wasn't done, though. Oh no. She leaned into her cruelty, flipping through her appointment book without breaking eye contact, her words slow and dripping with acid. Are you sure you're on the list? We don't hire janitorial staff for analyst roles. Maybe you're in the wrong place. Some spots just aren't meant for everyone, you know. The air grew suffocating, each syllable a jab at Alicia's pride. A young man nearby let out a sharp laugh. Look at her, Monroe Special Edition, dressed like she's applying for a temp job. Another whispered, loudly enough for her to hear, "Yep, that's Martha's kid. Seen them eating lunch in the parking garage." The words cut deep, not just into Alicia's pride, but into her mother's, into the legacy of black workers who'd endured such scorn and silence for generations. Can you imagine the weight of that history pressing down on her? Yet beneath the hurt and anger in Alicia's deep brown eyes, a flicker of defiance burned. No way was she bowing her head. Rachel snapped the book shut, crossed her arms, and leaned against the desk, her tone syrupy sweet but hard as stone. "Please have a seat. I'll check the list again." But her eyes screamed doubt, ridicule, and an unspoken verdict. Your skin, your background, they're unforgivable here. Curious glances lingered, whispers floating like daggers, as if Alicia's presence were a disruption, a joke in this high society world. She felt like a speck of dust in that grand marble hall, small but stubborn, ready to blow away every prejudice if given the chance. Could she really do it? The air grew heavier still as heavy footsteps echoed to her right. Mike Dalton, the morning shift security guard, emerged from a shadowed entryway. A burly white man, his tight uniform only amplified his intimidating bulk, his face as cold as steel. He stalked toward Alicia, his glare traveling from her head to her sneakers, openly contemptuous. Rachel leaned in to whisper something to him, her eyes gleaming with triumph, as if she'd found the perfect excuse to squash this problem. Alicia caught fragments, disturbance, trespassing, not on the schedule, and her heart sank. Rachel snapped back to her polished professionalism, her voice loud enough for the lobby to hear. "This isn't a public lounge, especially during work hours. We don't admit anyone without a confirmed appointment." Mike closed the distance, standing in Alicia's path like a wall. His gravelly voice dripped with entitlement. "People like you shouldn't be wandering around here, understand? This is a workplace for those who actually belong, not a hangout spot." He nodded toward Rachel, then added with chilling calm, "Head back to the basement where your mother works. We keep tight security here. Don't want trouble." Alicia gripped her folder, fighting to keep her hands steady under the weight of their authority. Mike's uniform on one side, Rachel's sharp smile on the other. Her back pressed against the cold marble counter, the lobby humming with whispered judgment. Some employees shook their heads, others smirked, but not one offered a shred of support. How could they stand by and watch? Alicia swallowed hard, meeting Mike's eyes without flinching, though shame flooded her chest. Her presence, her skin, her lineage, it was clear they were never meant to belong. One wrong move, one stray breath, and they'd have all the excuse they needed to toss her out. Rachel folded her arms, leaning toward Mike, her tone honeyed but sharp. "If Miss Monroe really had an appointment, it's probably a mix-up. Best thing? Go back to the basement with your mother, or leave quietly." The tension coiled tighter, threatening to snap if Alicia dared speak up. A few women passed by, lips curled in disdain, muttering, "She's just in everyone's way." A man in a red tie brushed past, deliberately jostling Alicia's shoulder without a glance. She took a steadying breath, lifting her chin, her eyes reflecting the sting of insult and the quiet fury within. Memories of her mother's silent endurance flooded her, Martha's unyielding resolve despite years of indignity. That thought sparked a fierce pride in Alicia's heart, a strength no taunt could extinguish. Wasn't this why she was here? To honor her mother, to prove they were more than the world's judgments? But before she could summon a retort, the lobby's tense rhythm shattered. Hurried footsteps echoed, papers slammed onto the desk, and a new voice boomed from the corridor, sharp and commanding. The CEO burst in, his face a storm of fury over a crisis no one else could solve. Who could have seen this coming? In that chaotic instant, Alicia, the janitor's daughter, humiliated, dismissed, underestimated, rose to her feet. Her heart pounded, but her resolve burned brighter. This was it, wasn't it? The moment to do something extraordinary, something that would rewrite her story and shake the very foundations of this prejudiced place. The lobby's suffocating air seemed to crackle as Alicia stood tall, her scuffed sneakers planted firmly on the marble floor. The whispers faded, the smirks froze, and all eyes turned to her, not with scorn now, but with curiosity. What could she possibly do? Her resumes, clutched tightly, felt like a lifeline, each page a piece of her mother's sacrifice, her own sleepless nights, her unyielding dream. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every overlooked soul, every dismissed dreamer. The CEO's voice roared, demanding answers, and Alicia felt the weight of opportunity. Could she seize it? Her mother's quiet strength pulsed through her, urging her forward. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a chance to change everything. And with a deep breath, Alicia Monroe, the janitor's daughter, stepped into the spotlight, ready to alter her fate forever. Can you feel the air crackle with tension? In that fleeting moment, the grand lobby of Bright Tech Innovations shrank into a suffocating cage, where the sting of racism and classism clung thicker than the grime on the skyscraper's windows. Grime Alicia's mother, Martha, polished away night after night. Every sneer, every whispered jab, every sidelong glance seemed to press down on Alicia Monroe, the janitor's daughter, standing there in her worn blazer and scuffed sneakers. But oh, how the world was about to shift. A sudden chain of events, like a thunderclap, shattered the stifling atmosphere, as if an invisible hand had grabbed the power balance and flipped it upside down. Could this really be her moment? From the shadowed hallway leading to the executive suites came a rapid, commanding thud of footsteps, not the soft click of polished heels from smug managers, but urgent, purposeful strides that screamed authority under pressure. Leading the charge was Douglas Blake, the towering CEO of Bright Tech, a man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair trimmed to perfection, his navy suit crisp and unwrinkled, his eyes cold as steel and sharp enough to cut through any facade. His reputation? A ruthless titan who crushed failure and mediocrity without a second thought. To his staff, he was a living paradox, dreaded yet admired, a symbol of iron discipline and unyielding efficiency. And now, here he was, storming into the lobby, a thick bundle of dog-eared papers clutched in his hand, a chaotic sight for a man so precise. His jaw was tight, his lips a thin line of barely contained fury. Can you imagine the weight of his presence? Two senior assistants trailed behind him, a man and a woman, their faces pale and glistening with sweat despite the icy blast of the lobby's air conditioning. In just a few strides, Douglas loomed over the reception desk, his rage as palpable as a gathering storm. With a thunderous slam, he dropped the dossier onto the marble counter, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the lobby. Staff who'd been snickering at Alicia, the unauthorized guest, jumped in their seats, scattering back to their stations as if dodging lightning. Douglas's voice roared, low and lethal, like a war drum rallying soldiers. Who here can solve this data crisis? Huh? Where's your analytics team? All those MBA hotshots. Have they all just given up? His steely gaze swept the room, peeling away every pretense, every ounce of smugness. It landed briefly on Alicia, her small frame pressed against the counter, her presence vulnerable yet somehow defiant. In his fury, the lines of social strata, race, class, status melted away. All he cared about was results. Could she dare to step into that fire? Rachel Evans, the receptionist who'd mocked Alicia moments before, felt her composure crack like thin ice. Her face tightened, her polished veneer crumbling as she scrambled to deflect attention. "Mr. Blake, I'm handling an outside situation," she stammered, her voice sharp with desperation to belittle Alicia. "She's not staff, could cause a disturbance. I was about to have security escort her out." But Douglas's glare sliced through her words like a blade, rendering her irrelevant. He didn't care about outsiders, people of color, or janitor's daughters. He cared about one thing: fixing the data meltdown threatening his empire. Brandishing the papers, he barked, "I don't care who fixes it, janitor, intern, or my dog. If it gets done, I want it now. We've got a board meeting in 2 hours, and without results, nobody walks away happy." The lobby fell silent, as if the air itself held its breath. Can you feel the weight of that ultimatum? Those who'd mocked Alicia, snickering men in leather chairs, sneering assistants, now exchanged nervous glances, their bravado replaced by dread. Brian Carter, the CFO, peeked from the hallway's edge, shrinking back as if dodging an explosion. In that moment, bias bowed to a new, universal fear, being exposed as incompetent under Douglas's merciless gaze. Alicia, though, stood like a statue carved from courage, her mind racing. Fear, confusion, and then a spark of hope. Could this be her chance? Her shot to prove she was more than her worn clothes, her skin, her mother's job? One misstep, though, and she'd be banished forever. Mike Dalton, the security guard still looming over her, turned to Douglas, his tone a mix of meekness and territorial bravado. "Sir, I'll remove her from the lobby so she doesn't disturb." Rachel's eyes gleamed, begging for permission to cast Alicia out. But Douglas silenced them with a single, dismissive wave, his focus unyielding. Time seemed to freeze, the ticking clocks, the passing footsteps, all paused under his icy stare. Then his eyes locked on Alicia. The small black girl pressed against the cold marble, her scuffed sneakers a stark contrast to the polished floor. "Who are you?" he barked, his voice cutting through the silence. "What are you doing here? Do you know anything about data analysis?" The lobby froze, every gaze pinned on Alicia, waiting for her to crumble, to confess her inadequacy, or to be dramatically ejected as they'd all anticipated. But Alicia lifted her head, her deep brown eyes blazing with determination. She knew failing to seize this moment would shatter not just her dreams, but her mother's, too. Her voice trembled but held firm, ringing clear through the tense hush. "My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm here for the data analyst interview, but if there's an issue with the report, I can try to help." Can you imagine the courage it took to say that? The room gasped. No one expected the janitor's daughter, the black outsider they'd just dismissed, to step up where the company's experts had faltered. Scoffs rippled through the crowd. "Who does she think she is, standing on our data team's shoulders?" Rachel ground her teeth, muttering, "So delusional, completely embarrassing." Mike hissed a warning, his voice low and threatening. "If you take this on, you're asking for trouble." But Douglas was different. His gaze softened, not with warmth, but with intrigue, not at her status as an outsider, but at her rare, unshakable confidence. He didn't sneer or scowl. Instead, he stared at her a moment longer, then, to everyone's shock, handed her the dossier, his voice steady as stone. 5 minutes. If you can find the problem our data team couldn't, I'll personally interview you. If not, you leave this building forever." Can you feel the stakes? The lobby held its breath. Rachel froze, her smugness replaced by disbelief. Mike's eyebrows shot up, his stance faltering. Curious staff clustered by the glass-walled meeting room, where Alicia now had exactly 5 minutes to make or break her fate. And just like that, the power balance in Bright Tech's grand lobby flipped. No more insults, no more blatant bias, no more petty cruelty. Everything was swept away in a storm of opportunity, where the verdict would hinge on intellect, not skin color, status, or favoritism. Alicia straightened, stepping toward the glass-walled room, her steps no longer trembling but steady with purpose. Her heart pounded, but courage burned brighter, fueled by the silent pride of a daughter long marginalized and the weight of her mother's hopes. This wasn't just a test for her. It carried the dreams of countless unseen black workers lost in the city's glittering facade. Could she rise to meet it? Outside, Rachel and Mike lurked like vultures, their prejudice unshaken. Rachel's eyes followed Alicia with cold resentment, her thoughts venomous. Let her try. When she fails, I'll be the first to prove people like her don't belong here. But history, oh, how it loves to surprise. Those in power don't always get the final word, and the rising tide was ready to sweep away the old guard, ushering in a battle waged by wit, grit, and unyielding self-belief. The air, already thick with tension, grew electric as astonishment and doubt rippled through the crowd. Every whisper, every glance from the hallway to the coffee bar zeroed in on Alicia, the petite black girl standing before a sea of white faces and polished suits, a world she'd only ever glimpsed through the foggy windows her mother cleaned. Today, she was at the center of suspicion, expectation, and a fragile, burning hope. On the far side of the thick glass, Douglas stood, arms crossed, his deep-set eyes wrestling between trusting a stranger and clinging to the company's safe status quo. Around him, colleagues, security guards, Rachel, and Mike stared rigidly, their scrutiny like invisible arrows aimed at Alicia's every move. Some waited eagerly to mock her failure. Others were simply curious about this daring rebellion. But none, not one, truly believed the poor black girl could succeed. Could they be wrong? Alicia sat in the cold, black leather chair, the towering stack of documents before her, data tables, reports, forecasts, tangled footnotes, and dancing numbers. Vivid memories flooded her. Nights spent studying behind the old reception desk while her mother swept the halls, her eyes stealing glimpses of analysts debating figures through the office glass. She'd salvaged discarded reports, poring over equations, algorithms, and annotations, solving practice problems to prove, to her mother, to herself, that intellect knows no color. Now, that experience surged back, steadying her hands. She flipped through pages at lightning speed, her eyes scanning like lasers, catching logical errors and mismatches the experts had overlooked in their haste. She zeroed in on the tiniest details, the very places her colleagues had skipped. Was this her moment to shine? Outside, Rachel's feigned calm shattered. Every time Alicia paused to think, Rachel glanced at her watch and smirked, certain of her imminent failure. Mike stood like a boulder by the glass door, his eyes never leaving Alicia, ready to shove her out at the first sign of trouble. Meanwhile, Douglas watched her every move, their eyes meeting in a silent pact. In this room, at this moment, only ability would decide her fate. 3 minutes in, the lobby's murmurs grew louder as onlookers pressed against the glass. Do you think she'll actually find something? Look how awkward she sits. What was Douglas thinking, handing our company's fate to a nobody, the janitor's daughter? Rachel whispered to Mike, her arrogance slipping. Time's almost up. This is a joke. Her blind confidence will be her downfall. Mike nodded, yet even he couldn't deny a spark of curiosity. Why did Alicia's eyes shine with such focus, such rare fire in a place determined to reject her? At the 4th minute, the tension spiked. The numbers began to snap into place. Alicia spotted an overlooked line in the Q2 data, a raw material contract that had expired and gone unupdated in the price forecast model, throwing everything off. Her heart raced. She underlined the critical entry, flipped back to the appendix to cross-check last year's contracts, and, relying on mental math honed from balancing her family's meager budget, adjusted the model's formula. No computer, no software, just her mind, sharpened by real-world grit. Can you imagine the pressure? At 4.5 minutes, she looked up, meeting Douglas's intrigued gaze. Rachel's lips curled, anticipating collapse. Mike glanced at his watch, anxious. Employees pressed their faces to the glass, waiting for the janitor's daughter to buckle. But Alicia didn't buckle. Oh no, she stood, clutching her annotated dossier, and tapped the glass tabletop once, the sound echoing like a victory bell. The glass door slid open, and Alicia stepped out, her gaze no longer fearful, but radiant with self-belief. She held the dossier toward Douglas, her voice steady with composed strength. Here's the root cause of the discrepancies. The Q2 raw material contract expired and wasn't updated in the model, skewing every subsequent figure. By adjusting the model with the new contract terms, all the numbers realigned. The lobby fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Had the janitor's daughter just outshone them all? Can you feel the electricity in the air? The moment Douglas Blake took the papers from Alicia Monroe's trembling hands, something extraordinary sparked in his eyes. A flicker of genuine excitement, a rare emotion breaking through the iron wall of a man hardened by countless corporate disappointments. Was this really happening? He signaled his assistant with a sharp nod, and the room held its breath as the young woman tapped furiously at her tablet, verifying Alicia's calculations. Minutes stretched like hours, the tension so thick it could choke you. Then, the screen lit up, and every figure aligned perfectly. Flawless, undeniable proof of Alicia's brilliance. Can you imagine the shock rippling through that marble-floored lobby? Silence crashed over the crowd like a tidal wave. Rachel Evans, the receptionist who'd sneered at Alicia, froze, her knuckles white against the desk, her smug confidence shattered. Mike Dalton, the burly security guard who'd loomed over her with menace, took a step back, his bravado evaporating like mist. The onlookers, those polished suits who'd mocked the janitor's daughter, the small black girl in worn clothes, stood mute, jaws slack, unable to process that she had outdone Bright-Tech's entire analytics team and senior management. Douglas studied Alicia, his steely gaze softening into something rare. Admiration, respect, emotions forged in the crucible of a CEO's relentless battles. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low but carrying the weight of profound esteem. Alicia met his eyes, her voice steady as a rock. "Alicia Monroe." Behind her, Rachel sagged, drained of her venomous swagger. Mike couldn't even look at her, his eyes glued to the floor. Douglas turned to the stunned lobby, his expression shouting louder than words. Sometimes, the greatest talent rises from the places you least expect. As Alicia stepped away from the glass-walled meeting room, her scuffed sneakers no longer squeaked with hesitation but rang with purpose. The bias, the sneers, the cruel laughter, they'd become the fuel for her transformation, a springboard launching her into a new reality. In that moment, she didn't just reclaim her dignity. She forced an entire power structure to stop dead in its tracks and question what true worth really means. Can you picture it? The crowd that had jeered her, those who dismissed her as a speck of dust on Bright-Tech's polished marble, now stood frozen, their whispers silenced by the sheer force of her triumph. Every eye locked on her, the small black girl they'd written off, now the center of a moment that would echo through the company's history. In her hands, she clutched a creased packet of papers, scribbled with notes and numbers underlined in a dull pencil. Her only tools in a battle won without computers or corporate backing. Just her razor-sharp mind, honed by years of studying in the dim basement corridors beside her mother, Martha, who'd scrubbed this very building for decades. Douglas stood before her, arms folded, his once cold eyes now warm with respect. He didn't rush to praise or jump to conclusions. Instead, he flipped through her marked pages, checking each calculation with the precision of a surgeon. His assistant's fingers flew across the tablet, the soft clicks of keys the only sound in a lobby thick with anticipation. Curious employees pressed their noses to the glass, their earlier mockery replaced by a mix of awe and unease. Rachel and Mike? They forced calm masks, but beneath their facades churned a storm of anxiety, anger, and the bitter sting of shame. How could they have been so wrong? Alicia stood tall, hands clasped behind her back, her chin lifted high. Gone was the trembling girl who'd crossed the threshold of prejudice just minutes ago. In her place stood a young woman radiating fierce pride, her conviction in her own worth unshakable. She didn't glance at Rachel's flushed face or Mike's averted eyes. Her focus was on Douglas, the one man still holding her fate in his hands. Then, in the hush broken only by the assistant's keystrokes and the crowd's heavy breaths, the verdict came. The assistant looked up, her voice catching with disbelief. "Sir, the calculations are correct. The results match the benchmark data perfectly, no discrepancies." Douglas closed his eyes for a heartbeat, as if shedding the weight of a crisis that had haunted him for days. He turned to Alicia, his voice steady but brimming with admiration. "You just saved our board meeting from disaster. Do you realize what you've done?" His words hit the lobby like a shockwave, rippling through every stunned onlooker. The truth dazzled like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Real value doesn't come from a fancy degree, a privileged pedigree, or the right skin color. Rachel, who'd thought she ruled the lobby's flow, stood with her face burning, her knuckles white against the desk. She was no longer the gatekeeper, but a bystander to a whirlwind that had upended her world. "Maybe it was just luck," she stammered, grasping for excuses. "Our experts were tired. They overlooked something. How could someone without credentials?" Douglas's steely glance cut her off like a guillotine. "We judge results here, not luck or background. She found what a six-figure NBA team missed. That's what counts." Rachel fell silent, her head bowed, suffocated by her own pettiness and the sharp sting of humiliation. Deep down, though, a dark ember of resentment flickered. She couldn't stomach that her small empire had been shaken by someone she deemed unworthy. Mike was no better off. His face twisted with helpless fury, his broad frame shrinking as he stepped back, unable to meet Alicia's gaze. His belief that those born in the basement belonged there had been slapped down by reality, leaving him rattled, his little realm of power crumbling. The crowd outside, once jeering, now exchanged looks of awe, envy, and cautious respect. Some flushed with shame, others turned away, unable to face their own flaws reflected in Alicia's triumph. Her success meant nothing at Bright Tech would ever be the same. After a solemn pause, Douglas stepped forward, extending his hand. "Alicia Monroe, I want you to present these findings to our board of directors. They need to know the truth, and that this company thrives because of people brave enough to break its limits, like you." Can you feel the weight of that moment? The lobby fell into a deeper hush, broken only by the soft whoosh of the automatic doors. Alicia clasped Douglas's hand, feeling its firm strength and drawing from it a surge of confidence. "If you refuse to stop fighting, no one, not even the most powerful, can keep you down." She turned toward Rachel and Mike, saying nothing. No need for retaliation, no gloating. Her silence was a thunderous reply. Their words of denial, their petty defenses, were mere whispers drowned by the roar of justice, courage, and unbreakable self-belief. From that moment, Alicia was no longer a shadow in the basement, no longer just the janitor's daughter. She'd shattered the barriers of prejudice and indifference, and her journey, a blazing path of intellect rising from obscurity, had truly begun, promising challenges and boundless hope ahead. The CEO's assistant's confirmation hit like a thunderclap on a clear day. Alicia stood there, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline, yet her face glowed with a serene strength. Douglas's gaze, once cold and detached, now burned with resolve. Without hesitation, he declared, his voice booming like a general's on a battlefield, "Cancel all remaining interviews for today. Miss Monroe, come with me." His command froze the lobby, every eye wide with shock. Rachel stood statue still behind the desk, her panic unmasked, her smug smile extinguished. Mike hung his head, his shoulders slumping as the rigid social order he'd clung to crumbled. The mocking whispers morphed into murmurs of disbelief, admiration, and even envy. Those who jeered now turned away, unable to face Alicia's radiant triumph. Was this really the same girl they dismissed? Douglas strode through the stunned crowd, not looking back, and Alicia followed, her steps heavy with astonishment and pride, a flicker of nerves dancing in her chest. They walked the gleaming corridor to the topmost floor, toward the reinforced glass doors of the executive boardroom. a place Alicia had only glimpsed in hurried daylight as she trailed her mother after night shifts. Could she really be here, not as the janitor's daughter, but as the one who'd saved the company from crisis? The doors swung open, revealing a ring of power. Executives in impeccable suits, their eyes cool, their presence heavy with million-dollar decisions. Douglas led Alicia to the front with unwavering purpose. "This is Alicia Monroe, the person who solved the crisis our expert team missed. I want her to present these findings to the board. Leave prejudice at the door. Here, we deal in truth." Can you imagine standing in her shoes? The room fell silent, then hummed with tension. Some directors frowned. Others exchanged uneasy glances, all registering shock at seeing a casually dressed black girl beside their legendary CEO. In their eyes, Alicia saw echoes of Rachel's and Mike's contempt, but also discomfort. They no longer dared laugh. Instead, they challenged her with silent doubts. Douglas handed her the dossier, gesturing for her to begin. Her hands shook slightly, but as she stepped to the digital display, her eyes glittered with pride, her voice clear and strong. "I found that a raw material contract expired in Q2 and wasn't updated in the forecasting model, skewing every subsequent data point. By cross-referencing the appendices and adjusting the formula with the renewed terms, all discrepancies vanish. Here's the reconciliation." Her words rang out, steady and unflinching. She presented with fluency, fielding probing questions from veteran board members determined not to let an outsider steal their thunder. Each time, Alicia's self-taught knowledge and unwavering composure shone through, never faltering. Outside, Rachel curled up behind the reception counter, her fury and envy boiling over. She texted colleagues, "It's just beginner's luck. She'll trip up soon." Mike lingered in the hallway, arms crossed, his face a mix of anger and awe. The idea that someone from the basement could outshine him struck fear deep in his core. Fear that he, too, could be outpaced. Inside, the boardroom fell silent after Alicia's presentation. Directors conferred in low tones, some raising brows in surprise, others offering awkward apologies. A few older members scrutinized her, not for her lack of credentials, but for her courage and clarity, qualities they'd long lost to corporate polish. Had the janitor's daughter just redefined their world? Can you feel the pulse of that moment? The boardroom air thrummed with a charged silence as Douglas Blake stood at Alicia Monroe's side, his usually stern face softened by a rare glow of pride. Was this really happening? His voice, steady and commanding, cut through the tension like a beacon. "We've just witnessed someone with no formal credentials, no insider status, deliver what our high-paid experts couldn't. I believe in what Miss Monroe has shown us today, and I believe this is the future Bright Tech must embrace, a future free from prejudice and lazy thinking." His words landed like a thunderbolt, shaking the room. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then, a tentative clap broke the stillness, hesitant at first, then swelling into a wave of applause that echoed off the glass walls. It wasn't just for Alicia. It was a salute to a new era, one where merit, courage, and grit reigned supreme. Can you imagine the weight lifting from her shoulders? Yet, as her gaze drifted to the glass, where Rachel, Mike, and the doubters lingered, Alicia knew old prejudices wouldn't vanish overnight. But oh, she'd shattered the biggest barrier of all. Your worth isn't tied to where you come from, but to the courage to stand tall when the world turns its back. The applause faded, and Douglas nodded for Alicia to follow him down the gleaming corridor to his private office. A vast, opulent space with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's glittering skyline, a world reserved for the elite. Every step she took on the plush carpet, past walnut cabinetry and towering potted plants, felt like a dream, so far from the cramped basement halls where she'd studied beside her mother, Martha. The CEO's office door closed behind them, sealing out the noise, the judgments, the venomous stares. Douglas settled into his massive leather chair, gesturing for Alicia to sit across from him. His gaze wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. It was the sharp, measured scrutiny of a man who'd built an empire by sizing people up. Could she withstand that intensity? Silence hung heavy, broken only by the steady tick of an antique clock on the bookshelf. Douglas steepled his fingers, leaning forward, his voice low and cutting. "Ms. Monroe, tell me about you, your background, your education, your experience. I don't tolerate vague answers. I need to know who I'm trusting with my company's future." Alicia met his eyes, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. She took a deep breath, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'm Alicia Monroe, daughter of Martha Monroe, who's cleaned this building for nearly 30 years. I don't have fancy degrees. Everything I know about data and auditing, I taught myself, digging through discarded reports, eavesdropping on conversations during my mom's night shifts, driven by a burning need to prove I'm more than just the janitor's daughter." Can you feel the fire in her words? Douglas didn't interrupt, his gaze sharpening with a mix of surprise and intrigue. "No formal training, no internships, no classes, just observation?" he asked, each word deliberate. Alicia nodded, pride blazing in her eyes. "Yes, sir. I learned from what others threw away. Old charts, scraps of paper, even napkins in the basement cafeteria. It was perseverance, self-respect, and a refusal to let anyone box me in." Douglas paused, his eyes flicking to the city below, wrestling with a world where success was built on elite credentials. Alicia, this young woman who'd turned his crisis into triumph, was a puzzle no one could have predicted. He swiveled back, his voice steady. "Do you know what I'm weighing, Miss Monroe? I've met plenty of talent at Bright Tech, but few who dared to challenge bias, theirs and others. You've broken a major barrier today, but to change this whole system, you'll face suspicion, envy, even sabotage from those who can't handle someone different. Can you imagine the weight of that truth?" Alicia absorbed his words, feeling their gravity like a stone in her chest. She knew Bright Tech's power rested on invisible walls, pedigree, connections, titles, and she was about to climb them. Every glance, every whisper could become a dagger. Douglas leaned closer, his eyes piercing. "Are you afraid, Miss Monroe? Afraid of isolation, backlash, maybe even retaliation for doing what no one else dared?" Alicia didn't flinch. "I used to be afraid, but not anymore. I know I won't make everyone happy, but if I don't bow my head, my mother will be proud. And I won't let anyone, no matter how powerful, define my worth or my future." Her words rang with defiance, a fire no one could extinguish. A rare smile flickered across Douglas's face, part challenge, part approval. He tapped his pen on the desk, his voice firm. "I want you to lead our new company-wide data audit project, not as a team member, but as the team lead, responsible for finding errors, fixing them, and ensuring total transparency. I need fresh eyes and an unbreakable spirit." His words hit like a lightning bolt, and Alicia paused, a surge of disbelief and possibility coursing through her. 5 minutes of courage in the lobby, powered by her mind and grit, had led to this. "Thank you, sir, but I've never led something this big. I'll have a lot to learn." Douglas's gaze softened. "I don't need perfection. I need courage, perspective, and the will to defy prejudice. You proved that today. As for anyone too narrow-minded to learn from you, I'll deal with them myself." Can you feel the doors swinging wide open? Just outside the office door, Rachel Evans peered through the crack, her heart pounding with fury. She hissed to Mike, "This can't stand. If she's team lead, soon there'll be more like her on the board. What happens to our order?" Mike clenched his fists, his face flushed. "Don't worry, Miss Evans. Everyone has a weakness. She'll slip up soon enough." But as Alicia stepped out of Douglas's office, the weight of a new, daunting future on her shoulders, she knew the real battle was just beginning. It wasn't just her fight. It was the dawn of a generation overlooked, ready to step from the shadows, confront injustice, and rewrite their stories. Was she ready for what lay ahead? Alicia's first day as Bright Tech's data audit team lead began with sunlight pouring through the 18th floor windows, casting a stark glow across the boardroom. It illuminated the stern faces of the experts around the long table. their confidence a wall she'd have to break through. She paused at the polished wooden door, her borrowed blazer slightly rumpled, her folder gripped tightly. Anxiety swelled in her chest, but she forced a small smile, channeling her mother's quiet strength. Could she face this room of doubters? As she stepped inside, the air shifted, frosty, heavy with scrutiny. No warm welcomes, just cold stares, sizing up her blazer, her folder, her skin tone, so stark against the pristine suits of the white professionals. At the table's head sat Brian Carter, the CFO, his square jaw tight, his eyes narrowing with irritation. Beside him was Jessica Collins, a data specialist, her blonde hair pulled back, her laptop a shield. Luke Sanders, a young, ambitious executive, sat with arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. In the corner, Tommy Green, whose error Alicia had exposed, kept his head down, flipping through his report, shame and resentment etched on his face. "Can you feel the distrust thick in the air?" Brian cleared his throat, his voice calm but cutting. "I thought this was our internal review. Where's the new project lead?" Alicia met his gaze, her smile polite but firm. "That's me. I was appointed by CEO Douglas Blake." A ripple of surprise, then murmurs, swept the room. Jessica's voice dripped with mockery. "Have you ever done audit work? Any formal data, certification?" Her question was a test, sharp as a blade. Luke's sneer grew. "Surely you're self-taught." Tommy shrugged, avoiding her eyes, his silence heavy with the sting of his exposed mistake. These weren't questions to learn about her. They were meant to shove her back into place, to remind her she was an outsider in their world. Could she stand her ground? Alicia's voice was steady, unflinching. "I've never had formal audit training. I learned from discarded reports, through observation and analysis, studying the errors we overlook." Jessica's smile sharpened. "How interesting. This team has people with a decade of experience, veterans from top banks, leaders of multi-million-dollar projects." Brian tapped his pen, impatient. "Enough. Let's get started. Time's money. I want results, not fluffy stories." Alicia opened her laptop, projecting the audited data onto the screen, diving into the issues without hesitation. She explained logical errors, outlined fixes, her voice clear and practical. At first, her colleagues responded curtly, their skepticism a heavy fog. But as she drilled into details, their attention sharpened. Her insights were real, grounded, undeniable. Was she actually winning them over? Yet the doubt lingered, thick and unyielding. Jessica fired probing questions. Luke challenged her fiercely. Brian jotted notes, as if hunting for flaws. Tommy stayed silent, his eyes flickering with bitterness. The meeting felt like a duel. Their expertise, status, and pride against Alicia's intellect, courage, and drive to break conventions. She realized that earning their respect would mean proving herself every single day, hour by hour. The real fight wasn't just numbers. It was the biases, bruised egos, and simmering envy around her. She inhaled deeply. "Don't wait for someone to give you a chance." Her mother's words echoed. "Become someone they can't ignore." Would she rise to that challenge? Can you feel the fire in Alicia Monroe's heart? With a fierce resolve blazing inside her, she braced for the long, grueling battle ahead. A journey where every triumph would be carved out with sweat, pride, and unyielding persistence. The boardroom buzzed with a thick tension, heavy with wariness and suspicion. But Alicia wasn't about to shrink into the shadows or bite her tongue. No way. She scanned the room, meeting the curious, doubtful, and downright hostile stares head-on. Her shoulders quivered just a touch, but her eyes? They shone with a steely determination that could cut through steel. Standing tall, she lifted her chin and spoke, her voice calm but firm, slicing through the icy hush. "I know I'm not like you. My background, my skin, the fact that I didn't graduate from some fancy university, it makes me hard to swallow for some of you. But I'm not here to steal anyone's spot. I'm here because I see the gaps we miss when we're rushed or blinded by bias. Let me prove it with my work, not my resume or my skin." Can you imagine the courage it took to lay it all bare like that? For a heartbeat, the room fell deathly silent. Brian Carter, the CFO, looked up, his face unreadable. Neither a scowl nor a smile, but a flicker of thoughtfulness. Jessica Collins cracked a half smile, then bit her lip, caught off guard by Alicia's fearless honesty. Luke Sanders' smirk was half-mocking, but his eyes glinted with something new. Respect, maybe, for a real challenger stepping into the ring. Tommy Green, whose mistake Alicia had exposed, stayed quiet, his expression stiff but betraying a crack in his once-iron ego, a hint of unease. After what felt like an eternity, Brian's voice broke the silence, measured and genuinely curious, stripped of its earlier edge. If you see these gaps, what's your first move? Alicia didn't miss a beat. I'd start by auditing every step in our data pipeline, from the tiny errors we brush off as nothing to the structural blind spots we've ignored for years. I'll welcome every challenge, even if it's aimed at me, and I'll push back when I need to. We can't keep accepting mistakes just because everyone's on board with them. Her words were a spark, igniting the room. Jessica leaned forward, her tone sharp. And what if we don't listen? Alicia met her gaze with a warm, genuine smile. I won't demand your ear because of my title or because I'm chosen. All I ask is this. If I spot an error you missed, have the guts to face it, just like I faced all your skeptical stares today. A subtle ripple passed through the room. A shift, a pause, a moment of reflection. Alicia's raw courage didn't win them over instantly, but forced them to think twice. Brian gave a slight nod. Jessica fell silent, and Luke's smirk faded as he looked away, rattled. The meeting pressed on, and Alicia stood her ground, unshaken by challenges or cornered moments. She laid out her cross-check plan with precision, assigned clear roles, and insisted everyone, herself included, had the right, even the duty, to question each other. Can you feel the power in that? Her approach was a challenge wrapped in an olive branch, inviting collaboration as equals, with no one above accountability. After nearly an hour of fiery debate, the room's frost began to thaw. Harsh critiques softened into real questions about methods and processes. Some nodded in agreement. Others offered small tweaks. A flicker of progress in a world where trust was once a rare gem. As the meeting broke up, Tommy lingered, his steps hesitant. He approached Alicia, his face softer, a hint of gratitude in his eyes. You caught a mistake I couldn't see. Everyone's scared of being called out, but you made me look at myself. Thanks for not staying quiet. Alicia's warm smile met his handshake. None of us are perfect, Tommy. What counts is having the courage to own our mistakes and grow, not hide them. His grip tightened, a small but seismic sign that trust was taking root in this once cold room. Can you see the bridge she was building? Outside, Jessica passed Rachel Evans, the receptionist who'd once dripped with arrogance, and shook her head. She's not someone you can just knock down. Rachel's frown deepened, frustration churning inside her, now laced with a twinge of worry. Alicia's steady light was slipping beyond her control. As Alicia walked down the hall, she no longer felt like a speck among giants. She knew the real fight loomed ahead, and stubborn prejudices wouldn't vanish after one meeting. But every act of bravery, every refusal to bow, was a leap toward proving her worth, not by titles or roots, but by her mind and heart. The data room's vibe shifted slowly after that tense meeting, but it wasn't Alicia's detailed plan or assignment chart that made the difference. It was how she led, quietly, calmly, unlike any team lead they'd known. She didn't bark orders or hide behind her title. Instead, she set up shop in a small room off the main hall, her door always open, inviting questions. She listened to every comment, timid, snarky, or skeptical, with patience that disarmed even the sharpest critics. With Brian, she asked about his past audits, genuinely seeking his wisdom to refine her process. To Jessica, she admitted, my data digitizing skills need work. Can you guide me on the new system? It wasn't groveling. It was raw honesty, a willingness to show her flaws and grow from feedback. Can you imagine the strength in that vulnerability? By doing so, she chipped away at the wall between veterans and newcomers, insiders and outsiders. Luke, known for his biting sarcasm, was caught off guard when Alicia called on him. You questioned the inventory figures earlier. If you were in charge, how would you secure the data? His eyebrow arched, half sneer, half challenge. But when she listened, took notes, and engaged him, he couldn't just brush her off. He started tossing out ideas, which she wove into the system's design. Alicia never shied from admitting errors. When Brian suggested a better approach, she pivoted openly. Thanks, Brian. I missed that. Let's try your way. Her willingness to embrace criticism softened the team's defensive edges, showing them she wasn't the CEO's pet or an outsider, but a colleague driven by results and growth. Was she rewriting the rules? After one session, Tommy approached again, his hand trembling but his eyes warmer. No one's ever called out my errors without humiliating me. Thanks for sparing my dignity. Alicia squeezed his hand, her smile gentle. We're all learning, Tommy. Without courage to face mistakes, I can't grow either. That handshake sent a ripple through the team. The leader wasn't here to flex power but to lift everyone up. From that day, the audit room's frost melted bit by bit. Brian shared reference materials. Jessica showed Alicia advanced techniques. Luke's challenges turned substantive, and Tommy pitched ideas with a new spark. Down the hall, though, Rachel watched, her eyes narrowing, waiting for Alicia's stumble. Mike muttered about favoritism, seeking allies in a shifting world. Can you feel the tension brewing? Alicia felt her roles weight more than ever. To turn skeptics into teammates, she stayed persistent, listening with empathy, standing firm on principles. Evenings found her studying, noting her weaknesses, seeking mentorship, proving her progress was earned, not gifted. Gradually, suspicion faded into trust, sparked by her success and cemented by days of shared work. The team wasn't just following a new lead. They were chasing a shared goal to make Bright Tech's data system a beacon of transparency and resilience. Yet, in the shadows, Rachel's and Mike's jealous glares lingered, joined by senior managers clinging to old privileges. Alicia knew not every bias would dissolve, but every ally gained was a crack in the old fortress. 2 days later, a terse message from Douglas hit her inbox. Prepare for the board presentation. Present all findings and initiatives. Don't let anyone underestimate your value. It was a summons, a verdict, a challenge. That evening, Alicia stayed late, rows of data and audit diagrams scrolling before her. Her anxiety wasn't just about numbers. It was about facing a room of powerhouses whose cool stares would be her real test. On the big day, she stepped into the top-floor boardroom, its leather chairs and gleaming table dwarfed by the sharp, authoritative faces of the leadership team, men used to deciding fates with a nod. Douglas sat at the head, his expression stern but expectant, silently urging, "Prove what they can't believe." Can you feel her heart racing? The weight of bias and expectation pressed on her, but Alicia clicked to her first slide, her voice steady. Our report missed a major supply chain fluctuation, skewing all data and risking millions in losses. I've traced the root error and propose a real-time audit workflow to catch issues early. The board tracked her every move, from adjusting her mic to advancing slides, their faces a mix of skepticism and curiosity. She refused to let fear show, standing tall, her courage alight in the storm. Was she ready to change their world? Can you feel the electricity crackling in the air? Alicia Monroe stood before the Bright Tech board, her heart pounding, as she unveiled her game-changing solution with side-by-side comparisons and crystal-clear visuals that laid bare the flaws of the old process. Her slides weren't just data. They were a battle cry, showing how her audit workflow sealed every gap. Her team, once a pack of doubters with raised eyebrows and crossed arms, now stood united behind her, ready to field the board's toughest questions. Was this the moment they'd all become one? But the room's scrutiny wasn't just about numbers. Mr. Walton, a board member with a razor-sharp mind and a reputation for cutting through fluff, arched an eyebrow, his voice cold as ice. Your presentation's impressive, Miss Monroe, But what gives someone without a fancy degree the nerve to stand here, outshining our high-paid experts? Can you imagine the weight of that challenge? The room froze, every eye pinned on Alicia. This wasn't about her technical prowess. It was a test of her right to even be there, a young black woman from humble roots daring to claim a seat reserved for the elite. Did she belong in this world of power? Alicia took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the sea of executives, unflinching. With quiet pride, her voice rang out, steady and strong. I grew up in this building. My mother, Martha Monroe, has cleaned these halls for 28 years. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but I learned from every step, every late-night sweep, studying the experts' work, digging through their discarded papers in the basement. I taught myself everything with pride, grit, and the belief that intelligence doesn't care about color or status. Her words were a spark, igniting the room. Could they see her truth? Some directors shifted uncomfortably, their biases exposed, but here and there, a nod signaled respect. At the table's head, Douglas Blake's face glowed with a subtle pride, his eyes shining. Alicia pressed on, her voice unwavering. I'm not here to push anyone out or beg for favors. I'm here to prove this company thrives on real value, transparency, brains, and teamwork, no matter where someone comes from. A hush fell, thick with the weight of her challenge. Mr. Walton leaned forward, his tone still cool, but softer. And if this plan fails, who takes the fall? Alicia didn't blink. I will, but I believe in this team, and together we won't fail. Her words were a vow, a defiance of the system's hidden prejudices, daring them to rethink their ways. Can you feel the stakes soaring? In the back, Rachel Evans seethed, her anger a bitter storm, mingled with a creeping unease. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Mike, usually quick with a sneer, leaned toward a colleague but held his tongue, silenced by the moment's gravity. As Alicia wrapped up, the room held its breath. Then Mr. Walton let out a low chuckle, nodding. Well then, this company could use some fresh air. Let's see how this plays out. A cautious applause broke out, tentative at first, then swelling with strength, echoing off the boardroom's glass walls. Douglas rose, shaking Alicia's hand in full view of the board, a gesture that screamed, "This is our future." Was this the dawn of a new era? In that moment, Alicia knew the road ahead was still littered with challenges, but one truth burned bright. She'd stepped out of her mother's shadow, out from under prejudice, and into the spotlight, propelled by her own skill and heart. The applause faded, but the boardroom hummed with the afterglow of her bold stand. Douglas's gaze had transformed, now brimming with conviction. He stood, his voice resonating like a bell. In my career, I've seen thousands of shiny diplomas, hired experts from Harvard, Stanford, you name it. But today, I see clearer than ever that true talent, grit, and courage, not fancy resumes or pedigrees, drive a team's success. His words hit like a thunderclap, shaking the room. Could they all feel the shift? He swept his gaze across the board, his tone heavy with purpose. I propose we create a new data audit division to ensure transparency and growth at Bright Tech. And no one deserves to lead it more than Alicia Monroe, the team lead who just saved us from a multi-million-dollar disaster. The room stilled, a flicker of hesitation crossing the directors' faces, shock, doubt, even wariness. These were men used to calling the shots, rarely challenged by outsiders. Yet here was Alicia, a black woman, the janitor's daughter who once moved invisibly through these halls, now commanding their attention. Her skill, resolve, and poise forced them to question their old rules for leadership. Was she the one to redefine their world? Mr. Walton, the board's iciest skeptic, nodded slowly, his approval rippling through the group. One by one, others chimed in, some cautiously, others grudgingly, but the consensus was undeniable. The resolution was set. Alicia Monroe would become Bright Tech's first-ever data audit director, rising from the lowest rung to the peak of authority. Douglas stepped forward, shaking her hand before the board, his voice thick with pride. You've taught us all a lesson. A company's strength lies in embracing new talent, tearing down barriers, and pushing forward. Alicia's determined smile met his, her eyes flashing with her mother's face. Martha, who'd pushed a cleaning cart through these halls, whispering, "Hold your head high. Keep your heart kind. Your worth isn't always seen at first, but you must believe it." Can you see her mother's pride? The news exploded through Bright Tech like a shockwave. Some couldn't believe it, jaws dropping. Others felt tears of pride welling up. A few, like Rachel and Mike, glared with bitter envy, but even they couldn't deny the old order was crumbling. Rachel sat at her reception desk, lips tight, grappling with what worth really meant. Mike passed Alicia in the hall, not with his usual scowl, but a grudging glance, a mix of acknowledgement and fear of the new dawn. Meanwhile, Alicia's team erupted in celebration. Tommy clasped her hand, beaming. "If you hadn't called me out, I'd still be blind to my own mistakes. You saved my dignity." Brian shared his expertise freely. Jessica sent a heartfelt email. "Thanks, Director, for inspiring me to grow." Luke, grinning, invited everyone for coffee, toasting, "To Alicia, not just a boss, but a real leader." Can you feel their joy? That evening, Martha stood at the lobby window, staring up at the glowing Bright Tech logo, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not from exhaustion, but from pride. This quiet woman, who'd never chased the spotlight, saw her daughter become the symbol of a new chapter, one built on belief and determination. As Alicia descended the grand lobby, past colleagues who once whispered behind her back, she felt no bitterness, no need for revenge. Her greatest win wasn't beating her doubters. It was showing them who they could be if they looked past prejudice. Amid her team's cheers, Douglas's firm handshake, and her mother's radiant gaze, Alicia walked out of the boardroom, lighter, freer, brimming with hope that true value would finally shine on its own merits. Was this her moment to soar? The next morning, as Bright Tech's new data audit director, Alicia stepped into the lobby, the sunlight casting a golden glow across the marble floors. For the first time, she held her head high, no longer stung by the scornful looks or whispered judgments she and her mother had endured. Beside her walked Martha, her silver hair catching the light, her worn coat a badge of years spent cleaning these halls. The weariness etched into her face was gone, replaced by a quiet wonder, her eyes tracing Alicia's path through a world once so unreachable. Could this really be their triumph? As they passed through the revolving doors, Mike, the guard who'd once blocked Alicia with cold disdain, bowed his head, holding the door with a quiet respect. His gaze wasn't a barrier anymore, but a nod of regret, maybe even redemption. Each gesture was a note in their victorious symphony, turning past pain into propulsion. Rachel, the receptionist who'd wielded prejudice like a weapon, stood, eyes averted, then whispered, just loud enough for Alicia to hear, "I'm sorry for what I said before." Alicia paused, her voice gentle but firm. "The past is done, but the future's ours to shape. I hope you'll feel proud when true worth shines here." Her words weren't a jab, but a bridge, a call to grow, to turn hate into change. Can you feel the power in her grace? Alicia led her mother down the corridor, past portraits of the company's founders and sleek offices once off limits. Her new colleagues, once skeptics, now greeted them with warm smiles. Some bowed to Martha, not as the janitor, but as the mother of a leader who'd earned the company's trust. At the hallway's end, Alicia stopped before the grand boardroom, where she'd take the director's seat, a place once reserved for the privileged. She squeezed her mother's hand, her voice thick with emotion. "Mom, I've saved you a seat at the table with the most powerful people here. Today you're by my side, so you know every sacrifice, every tear, every late night was worth it." Tears filled Martha's eyes as she hugged her daughter. A lifetime's journey from the basement to the top floor, from endurance to pride. "I'm so proud, Alicia," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not just for succeeding, but for never letting anyone dim your faith in yourself." Can you see their bond shining? Their embrace under the boardroom's radiant lights, once a symbol of exclusion, now stood as proof of a new truth. The triumph of a generation overshadowed by prejudice, proving intelligence and grit can shatter any barrier. News of Alicia's rise spread beyond the marble walls, with bulletins proclaiming, Bright Tech's first Black Data audit director, janitor's daughter takes the helm. It lit a fire in others trapped on the bottom rung. The children of cleaners, drivers, and laborers saw their dreams weren't impossible if they dared to learn and rise. As the workday ended, sunlight slanting through the towering windows onto their clasped hands, Alicia felt a truth resonate. The greatest victory isn't just reaching the top, but lifting those you love into that light, especially when it was once reserved for others. Was this the start of a revolution? Oh, Alicia Monroe's story sets my heart ablaze. It's a thunderous reminder that true worth isn't tied to fancy degrees or privileged roots. It's forged in grit, courage, and an unyielding belief in yourself. I'm beyond inspired by her journey, rising from the shadows of prejudice to shatter barriers at Bright Tech. This speaks volumes about the lifestyle we should embrace. One of relentless self-improvement, where we learn from scraps, like Alicia did, and never let others' doubts dim our shine. Socially, it's a wake-up call. We gotta stop judging people by their skin, status, or origins. How many brilliant minds are we ignoring because they don't fit the mold? It breaks my heart to think of the talent lost to bias, but Alicia's triumph gives me hope. Her story demands we challenge the status quo, push for inclusivity, and amplify voices from the margins. I'm furious at the Rachels and Mikes who cling to old hierarchies, but I'm thrilled by the Douglases who see potential beyond pedigree. Alicia's leadership, humble, collaborative, yet fierce, shows us how to live with integrity, owning our mistakes and lifting others up. This isn't just a corporate tale. It's a rallying cry for a world where everyone gets a fair shot. Let's celebrate those who dare to rise, like Alicia, and fight for a society that values heart and hustle over outdated norms. Her story isn't just moving, it's a revolution, and I'm all in for it.